outside of San Diego, who lost their lovable Chargers. Who's going to buy that? So now we've got Angels jerseys with Mike Trout on them for the next 18 decades. Does it really matter, Justin?
Well, the funny thing is, Eric, the Angels did this already. They paid a guy in Pujols and gave him all this money. He really did nothing for them at that point. So now they've turned around and they've doubled down on it, and they've gone to the deep end of the pool this time. I think it's hilarious that Moreno paid, $184 million in 2003 for the Angels, and he just gave Trout $430 million. I mean, that's insane to think about the way that baseball contracts are going. So I don't really know what it means. What if the Angels won with Mike Trout? He's a great name to have, and he's a hell of a baseball player. But like you said, what does it mean? He's not translating this team into championships. So I really don't know what it means. I feel like I'm so confused by the way that baseball runs their operations. It's like you either get paid a truckload of money, or they decide that, okay, now we have to penny pinch on everybody else. And we only want to do these short deals, and we want to try to get as many minor league deals as we can with guys. And I just don't understand baseball. And I really don't understand why they've let the league get bargained. And the players have agreed to some of the things that they have, because it's even worse than the NFL situations where you see, quarterbacks get paid a ton of money and other guys don't get, other positions don't get as much. Here in Major League Baseball, you've got a couple guys that are raking in a ton of money, and other guys that it feels like they can't even get a contract offer at this point. Chris Sale gets $30+ million a year for a 5-year deal with Boston. Mookie Betts will be up where he's going to have to be re-signed, and somebody's going to pay him a truckload of money. And then there's other guys where you see a list of 100 free agents that are sitting out there that aren't even getting offers. So I just don't understand financially what baseball is doing. But if I ran a team, it would take one heck of a player to get me to pay him $400+ million over 10 years. Or I better have one fantastic regional TV deal that can afford me the opportunity to have a guy sitting on my books for $35 million or so every single year for the next 10 years with the optics of it, and in terms of his base salary, much less the signing bonus and everything else that'll go into it. So I don't get it at all, Eric. I feel like, again, the Angels already went down this road with Pujols, and now they're right back in the same position again. When does Trout's skill set going to diminish to the point where $35 million is not worth it? When he's 32, 33, it's going to start, you would think, and then you're going to have that guy sitting on your books for the next 5+ years. It just makes no sense to me.
Yep, totally agree. Low to mid 30s. You start to see that decline in baseball. You don't have a lot of Tom Brady's in baseball. You get about as many in baseball as you get in football, which is 1, 2, 3, maybe every generation. It's the same in football. Drew Brees and Tom Brady, what's really special about them is their longevity. That's what's going to be special, I think, about LeBron James come later, is not necessarily how many championships he won. He's never going to win as much as Michael Jordan, but he's going to play at a high level in the league for probably 17 or 18 years. And so he'll amass those cumulative stats. Then we get to baseball. You don't see a lot of guys, maybe pitchers every now and then, a relief guy or whatever, play until he's 40, but you don't see a hitter that stays strong through his mid-30s. And so, yeah, the last 6, 7, 8 years of that deal, it is just not return on investment that's very smart if you look at what you're paying and what you're getting out of it. I've got to believe that financially, those owners look at that and they do have a return financially on that investment, or they shouldn't do it as a business owner. But what it's bringing you in titles, it just doesn't really equate to, well, I'll pay this one guy a mountain of money over the next 13 years, but we'll have 7 World Series titles out of it. It doesn't work that way. And so, therefore, I just don't understand the investment at all.
No, I don't understand either from the standpoint that this is a hitter. And unless you put good hitters around him and you protect him, the other team can pretty much take him out of the game. He may not really even get that many good pitches to see. You saw that happen with Bryce Harper in Washington, where for years they struggled to put hitting around him. So he just never got great pitches to hit. And then these guys start to press, and then the contract starts to play in. So the team makeup has to be there as well, Eric, because it's not like this is a pitcher where every 5 days you're running a guy out there and he's got a chance to get you deep in the game save your bullpen, and get you a win and sort of reset your team, stop losing streaks, take care of big-time matchups that you need to get a win in. This is a hitter that could easily go on an 0 for 25 slump. And part of the problem being that he's just not seeing any pitches to hit. And especially when you get into crunch time, when you get into wild card runs or you're trying to win a division, and even if you get to the playoffs, if you don't have good hitting around him, these guys will never live up to the deal. Same deal with Harper in Philly. They've got to find a way to get good hitting around him, or if he gets walked and gets on base and you can't capitalize on it, teams are going to take advantage of that. So that's the other side of this is a guy that may have a chance 4 times a game to get up and may really only have a chance to make an impact on 2 or 3 swings.
Boy, that's a really good point. And that's if he's fully healthy. Let's add in the fact that what if he pulls a hammy? What if he pulls a back muscle and for half the season he's struggling with a strained muscle and just doesn't have the power? I mean, you're losing half a season of a hitter.
Right.
So yeah, I totally agree with that. So let's transition from there. We're not going to hit NASCAR this week actually, because the race at Martinsville was led 500 laps, was 449 of them were led by Brad Keselowski, who went on to win. So I guess NASCAR,
he's still leading.
Yeah, they haven't solved their short track problem. I guess they have a short track problem now. I thought it was actually a pretty decent race if you don't count the Keselowski leading thing about it. I mean, the tire package was good. There was a lot of lanes on the track. You didn't see a lot of the goofy spin outs in the corner that you normally see at Martinsville that kind of slow the race down and make it drag because 50 of the laps are under caution. You got a lot of green flag racing. It seemed like guys could bump and bang and keep pretty stable, but they couldn't catch the leader. So dominance is dominance. And then before that, you saw Kyle Busch get that 200th win on the NASCAR's top level last week. Then, of course, this past weekend, he actually won number 201 because he won in that truck series again. So Kyle Busch has now surpassed the 200 marker that Justin and I believe means he's one of the best of all time and that his wins are really equal to and rising above what Richard Petty did. So definitely argue with us about that on Twitter, although I ran a poll that 75% of the people said that Kyle Busch's 200 wins was more meaningful than Richard Petty's because a lot of the points that Justin had brought up on last week's episode 239. So we just talked about mounds of money. Justin, as we close out the show here on episode 240, a guy that has made mounds of money but apparently has never spent a lot of it and has lived off of his endorsement deals very, very smartly, I might add, is Rob Gronkowski. At least that's how the story goes. Now he has announced that he is retiring from the NFL after 9 seasons. So I wanted to close out the show with this. I know it's in your show notes, so you probably have a question for me too, Justin, but here's the thing. Rob Gronkowski was a dominant tight end, maybe not as much over the past couple of seasons. Certainly in spots he was, but he's also battled a lot of injuries, that really difficult one with his elbow that he had. Is he a first ballot Hall of Famer based on the fact that he was a dominant tight end and has won 3 Super Bowls? Would you put him in the first time, Justin?
Yeah, I think you have to. I think when you talk about him being one of the greatest at his position and you throw out names like Tony Gonzalez and Shannon Sharp, both who are Hall of Famers, and then you add in just all the accolades and accomplishments and even the big time performances in Super Bowls and even playoff games and the stats he had when he was healthy and right, I think he's got to be. Now, some of that comes out to who will be in his class, who will be eligible at that point. But I think that everything that he did is just so out there. I mean, one of the first things you saw out on Twitter was just his highlight tapes of some of his plays and just some of the things he did, the way he just ran over people, the way he could just physically dominate the game, and really how he changed it from how teams had to guard the tight end position that a lot of teams didn't have an answer for him. I think you have to put him in there as a first ballot. I think he's going to go down as at least a top 3 tight end of all time in what he did. And of course, there's a recency bias out there. And anytime someone leaves, in order to make their shows a topic, they have to think that he's the greatest of all time. He's probably the greatest package tight end of all time, where he can do a little bit of everything. I don't think he was probably the pass catcher that Tony Gonzalez was, but for what he was able to do with Brady, I mean, he was unbelievable. There was points where you just looked at that team and felt like when the Patriots were out there, the the opposition had no answer for him. And if your team was playing him, you're sitting there looking at your roster on the defensive side like, oh my God, we literally have no answers for this guy and how we're going to stop him or slow him down. When he was healthy, Eric, in my mind, there just hasn't been anybody recently that's been close or has changed the game the way that he did.
Yeah, for me, he is a first ballot Hall of Famer. And I think, although I agree with you, it depends on who's in that same class. I think he still gets in no matter what because of a few factors. Number one, he did change the position. Not only his body type, but the style and the way that he played. You saw guys like Jimmy Graham really try to copy that and do what he did, but he didn't do it as well as Rob Gronkowski. Rob just seemed to dominate a football field if he had the health and the mindset to do it. When you go back to his rookie season and you're looking at from 2010 until now, nobody in the league has more receiving TDs in the NFL since his rookie season, according to ESPN Stats and Info. Rob Gronkowski has 79 touchdowns. Antonio Brown, the second on the list, has 74, with Des Bryant at 73. So for a tight end to have the most receiving touchdowns over the past 9 years, that to me is Hall of Fame material. And then you throw in the fact that he has 3 Super Bowls. You don't have the, well, he didn't win a championship argument. He's got 3 of them. So to me, you take a guy like Sharp or Gonzalez or some of those dominant, even Jason Witten, some of those dominant tight ends for long periods of time who really revolutionized the position into being that sort of secondary receiver to where, you had your wide receiver 1, your wide receiver 2, and then your tight ends became a very legitimate receiving option for quarterbacks to have another downfield. And I'm talking about a big downfield body to get the job done on the offensive side of the ball. Rob Gronkowski just took that to another level. And so for me, the Super Bowls, the accolades, the touchdowns, yeah, I think he changed the game enough to be a first ballot Hall of Famer.
I've heard some people throw this around. Do you think the timing of this was sort of pushed by the Patriots to sort of get Mr. Kraft out of the spotlight a little bit?
Oh, boy. Well, that's interesting. I mean, because if I'm Rob Gronkowski, what do I care? If I'm his agent or if I'm Rob himself, I mean, if I'm truly retiring and not intending to come back, then what do I care what Robert Kraft's situation is, right? So I think sometimes that, you talked about the downsides of Twitter earlier. I think sometimes that's another downside of Twitter is that there's a lot of hypotheses out there that, yeah, they're fun to talk about. They're fun to speculate. But for me, I don't know that I would necessarily go to that one because although it sounds like it's plausible, I don't think it's necessarily reasonable for the fact that, Rob's in a position now where it's like, thanks for all that you've done, but I'm going on to other things. And so Robert Kraft's situation is really not Rob's problem at this point.
But you don't think Gronkowski, I mean, look at his personality. You don't think he'd throw his owner a bone there, try to help him out? I mean, he was probably impressed with what he did.
A bone? I don't know that that's the right, that's the right thing you want to say there. I think Robert Kraft's throwing bones all over the place down in South Florida. But Rob Gronkowski, here's the thing. I think what we'll see with him is that this timing might be related to maybe something he's got coming up. I mean, he is a guy that I feel like John Cena out of, World Wrestling Entertainment, obviously The Rock. I see Rob Gronkowski sort of in that vein to where he could now at, 29 years old, I think, 30 years old. He can go be an entertainer now, even if that's for a year or two, and then maybe he unretires like Jason Witten's going to do. I don't think he needs to throw a bone to Robert Kraft. I just really don't, because I think he is now looking at this as I'm in full control, whether I play again or whether I don't, and he's going to have lots of opportunities down the road.
Yeah, I do agree with that. And who would have thought this, like with the way Gronkowski's career started, like in 2010, I wonder what odds you could have got that by the end of his career, who would have an explicit tape released first, Robert Kraft or Rob Gronkowski? I bet you could have got some pretty good odds on Kraft in Vegas at that time.
Yeah, if you were going to say someone's got to throw a bone to someone else, I would have thought Robert Kraft would be throwing a bone to Rob Gronkowski.
Yeah, it certainly feels like the statement that was made would have come out of Rob Gronkowski and not Robert Kraft. But what's he sorry for, Eric? I thought he was completely innocent.
Well, that statement read to me, boy, was that funny. That statement read to me like absolute legalese, right? So he doesn't take the plea deal. He says, no,